I wouldn't be comfortable almost identifying with any other group. To me, libertarianism or voluntarism is really just it's like accepting of a principle that is, like I said before, like you shouldn't initiate violence against peaceful people. Yeah. So I'm okay with accepting that as like a fundamental truth. To me, it's more on line with being like an abolitionist during slavery times. It's just like, we shouldn't have slavery.
The young libertarians, and I hope every conservative who watches Fox News hears me when I say this, they are the only hope for the country. The only hope. So there's no young conservative movement out there. It's either these kids are heroes. They live in a world of college campuses that's dominated by trigger warnings and safe spaces and Che Guevara t-shirts.
You're not up there trying to crack silly jokes. You're up there sending a message as a libertarian message.
Gary Johnson has fed into what all of the worst preconceived notions of libertarians are, that we're intellectual lightweight potheads, which is not true.
See, the difference between me and these guys is that I've read their arguments. You know what I mean? Like, I know the democratic socialist argument. When you're just like, government is coercion? What are you talking about? It's like, okay, so you're not at all familiar with the classical liberal argument, the libertarian argument, the Chicago school economic argument, and clearly the Austrian school or the more Rothbardian libertarian argument.
This party is built up, and a lot of, not the people at the top of the party who run the LP, but a lot of people who work in the party, a lot of people in the trenches, are real ideological libertarians.
I just feel like Gary Johnson has this way of selling the libertarianism as this kind of like, well, you know, it's more practical if we do it the libertarian way. Huh. Whereas I like, you know, when he's asked about the wars, he'll say things like, he goes, I think if you look on average, these military interventions have hurt more than they've helped.
That is exactly how he sounds. That's a really good impression.
Yeah. Well, so by the way, that's not necessarily incorrect. It's just like, who would talk about mass murder that way? I mean, it's like talking about slavery, and you're like, well, I just think overall this is an inefficient way to get cotton. And you're like, Jesus, dude! Like, and you're head abolitionist?
Oh, it seems like the same thing with the Rand Paul campaign. A bunch of people get some jobs off of it. A bunch of people make some money. And what have we done for the actual message of libertarianism, which, by the way, is the greatest political philosophy ever devised by man? We have spent more money on welfare in the last 3 decades than the socialists of 1870 could have ever possibly imagined. Yeah. And all it's done is make the gap get even bigger between rich and poor. It's the most failed policy in human history. And the way, besides maybe like feudalism or something like that.
The way we're going to organize society is that we're going to give one person the power to steal, or we're going to give one group of people the power to steal everybody else's money, because people won't be moral enough and do the right thing when someone's starving. But this small group of people, politicians, the croniest, most bought and paid for pieces of shit, these guys will use power that nobody else has to do the right thing.
Well, that's where it falls apart.
No, exactly. That's where it falls apart.
Even the idea of like subsidizing college that Bernie Sanders is contributing, if you just think it through, you're asking kids who don't go to college to subsidize the ones who go. It's just so messed up. What'll never come up when you don't have a libertarian candidate in the Republican or Democratic debates is the #1 issue, which is government spending. No one talks about anything about how we spend more than any government has ever in the history of governments. It's out of control. It's unsustainable. In the Republican debate, they talked about expanding and rebuilding this military. And in the Democratic debate, they talked about expanding entitlement programs. Liberals just want to live in this world where if there was just a little bit more government regulation, we wouldn't have this, like you said in the opening. And it's just not true. It's just unfortunate. And the worst societies, the most violent societies, are never the ones that have like a laissez-faire government that isn't doing anything. They're the ones that have governments that regulate every aspect of human life. Yeah. And then these liberals try to make it out like we're dumb for being concerned about that. Like in this war on terror, we overthrew Saddam Hussein, we overthrew Gaddafi, we've degraded Assad. All of these guys, bad people, but what they all had in common was they fight terrorism. And I think we've done a lot to create sending weapons into Syria that got into the hands of ISIS. We've made a lot of mistakes. We should not repeat those.
Here's the thing about most of us who don't murder people. We don't have to tell other people we're not murderers.
Kids like myself who hated school, I'm an intensely interested person, you know, really love to learn about all this shit, but hated school, and you associate that with education, and they're two very, very different things. Education is life, you know, it's something that should go on for your entire existence, and school has become this formula that I personally think...
schooling, instruction.
Look, I think we can do way better.